Uh, Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of the Economic Forum Technical Advisory Committee on future state revenues to order. Can we please do a roll call?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And for the record, Russell Guindon with the Fiscal Analysis Division of Legislative Council Bureau. And so I will call the roll. Wayne Thorley.
Here.
Sarah Kaufman.
Here.
Matt Lawton.
Here.
Mary Walker.
Here.
Vice Chair Amy Stephenson.
Here.
Chair David Schmidt.
Here.
And Mr. Chairman, let the record show that Andrew Klinger let us know that he could not make it, so he's absent, excused. And with that, then we have a quorum of the members of the TAC, and we can proceed with the meeting, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Guindon. Moving to agenda item 2, this is the first opportunity for public comment in the meeting. Do we have any public comment here in Carson City? Seeing none, do we have any public comment on online?
Chair, your public line is open and working, and you have no callers at this time.
All right, thank you very much. Moving to agenda item 3, we have the review and approval of revenue forecasts for selected general fund sources, including taxes, licenses, fees, fines, and other revenue, along with forecasts for various tax credit programs that may be taken against certain general fund sources for presentation to the Economic Forum at the Forum's December 5th, 2022 meeting. This is a combined agenda item, slightly different than how we've had it in the past. So we have both the tax credits and the revenue forecasts together in one item. And with that, I'd like to welcome Mr. Guindon to go through the revenue forecast materials.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, for the record, Russell Guindon with the Fiscal Analysis Division. And so before we actually get into the heart of the agenda item, Mr. Chair, I just want to go through that you should have 4 tables and then a single page that is a set of charts. And so you should have, as you know from the last meeting, there's the table 3, that shows the various, the forecast by the agency responsible for administering that revenue source, and then fiscal and budget and or GFO's forecast. And these would be, if they were revised, these are the forecasts that each entity did for presentation to this body. And then you have table 3, but it says difference. So that's the difference between what you're looking at in the table 3 that I just referenced and the table 3 that would have been brought forward to this body at the last meeting. And then you have the technical advisory committee forecast table. And so that would be, again, the process where we, budget and fiscal, look at the forecast of theirs as well as from those agencies that we asked if they wanted to submit revised forecasts. And we don't go back and redo all of the agencies. We do more of the major ones: the Secretary of State, Treasurer's Office, Taxation, Gaming Control Board. And then you have so then that was the decision that you see in the table for the consensus between GFO and fiscal that be brought forward for this body's consideration. And then you have the difference table. So just like the other one, it's showing you the difference between the TAC table for this time versus the November 4th meeting. And then finally, you have a single page that has 4 charts on it, and that is to be able to respond to Ms. Walker's question regarding the unclaimed property. And so I'll address that more, Mr. Chair, when we get to that revenue item. And so then finally, before beginning, I just, as last time, want to note that all this material is available at the GFO's website, where they maintain the stuff for the Technical Advisory Committee. So that is budget.nv.gov/meetings/budget_division. And so for those that may be listening or others, so all these documents are up in PDF form. But if anybody does feel that they need to get a printed version, they can make that request to GFO or fiscal, and we can get that material to them. And so with that, Mr. Chair, was just the opening remarks that I wanted to make for this agenda item. And so with that, if it's okay with the chair, we can sort of proceed like we did last time, where I'll just go through the ones that I think that are worth making comments about. And I'll apologize in advance that there'll be a lot of redundancy here to the last meeting. But since a few weeks have gone by for the members as well as any of the public that may be listening, I think it'll mainly concentrate on those revenue sources that have uniqueness to them. and when you look at the tables, to make sure we just get that on the public record for this meeting. And so with that, then I realize, it's a little hard, but if you can keep all 4 tables sort of laid out. And so I'll try and go through them. And so the first one are the net proceeds of minerals and the mining gross revenue tax on gold and silver. And so there you see the current forecast for FY23 only, and then no forecast for FY24 and 25. And that is because of the legislation passed in the 21 session. It requires the proceeds from the state portion of the net proceeds of minerals, as well as the proceeds from the new gold and silver excise tax to go into the general fund through FY23 and then begin going to the state education fund in FY2024. And thus this body and or the economic forum is not responsible for forecasting the revenues that go to the state education state education fund. You're only responsible for forecasting unrestricted general fund revenue sources. And so you can see that when you look at the difference, there's a upward revision to the forecast of net proceeds, which is somewhat de minimis. But you'll see some of these changes are not very big, and that's because sort of the philosophy or strategy is each forecaster should do what they do. And so whether it's, and then not for GFO or fiscal to decide, well, it really didn't change things, they don't change things. Because if you're going to go through the process of actually changing your forecast, however small, then it should just be incorporated into the process. So you can see, even though it's a $12,000 change, that's what's going on. And you can see that's principally because fiscal changed their forecast for FY23 for the 2, as well as in the budget division changed their gold and silver forecast more in the out year. And thus you see for gold and silver, it's an upward revision of approximately $1.8 million. Sorry, Mr. Charles, just wait for... Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair. Just waiting to get a little bit of noise reduction. So that's those 2 revenue sources. And then going down, there was no change to the forecast you can see in the gaming section, except for the racing fees, and it's very slight, and that's just to true up against what we actually know year to date. And that's also part of the process, that we can go from, with the agencies letting us know, or we can go into the controller system and see what's posted since the last meeting. And we believe we should pick that up whether it's an upward or a downward revision. And so that's what's going on. Otherwise, the Gaming Control Board did not revise the forecast, and GFO and fiscal were still comfortable with that outlook. And here it's worth noting again, when you look at advanced license fees, why you see that it goes up in FY24 is because the new property that's going to open, the Fontainebleau, is going to come online approximately less than a year from now. And as the sort of the expectation, thus it would be the advanced license fee would be required in FY24. Then at the bottom of the page, you have the transportation connection excise tax. Remember, this is the 3% tax that on the charge for the passenger carriers, so taxi cabs, limousines, but also Uber and Lyft, those types of transportation connection network company entities. And so we got some additional information, and then you can see, looking at Table 3, that there was a revision to the forecast up by the fiscal division and the budget division by more. And so then the rule that we used was to average all 3 forecasts last time, and the decision was made to maintain that rule. So thus you can see the upward revision is approximately $1 million a year to the forecast path. And so then looking at the cigarette tax, there you can see, looking at the additional year-to-date information, that all 3 forecasters made downward revisions. But there the rule was that the taxation's forecast was not included in the forecast last time. And even though they changed the forecast and it came up closer, budget and fiscal thought to just maintain the rule of the fiscal and budget. And thus you can see there's more of a downward revision, about $1.5 million in FY23. And then around 400,000 in the out years in terms of a downward revision. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's the things that I wanted to comment on the first page there. And so I can keep proceeding then and just go through unless you want me to pause for questions.
I think we just pause for questions after each page. So are
Okay.
there any questions on page 1? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry. Again, for the record, Russell Gannon, I just need to myself flip all the pages. So you need to flip to the third page because the next page is blank. It's the modified business tax, which is handled by the Economic Forum explicitly at their meeting this upcoming Monday. So on this page, you really don't see that many changes till you get down the middle of the page. For the governmental services tax is the first one. And so there you can see the change. The last time the budget forecast was excluded from the averaging rule. And so you can see they made changes to the forecast, and it's actually closer to the group. But that the decision was just made to still leave them out of the average, and thus you can see it's a slight downward revision. And the latest month of actual was actually down slightly. So it's really more of a path adjustment due to probably having additional more year-to-date information. So then for the business license fee, you can see there that there were revisions to the forecast by the fiscal division upwards. The budget office came down. And so then the rule that was used was averaging agency and fiscal, and budget wasn't included. And even though the change brought it closer into the group, when fiscal and budget met to go through it, the decision was to maintain the rule of averaging the agency and fiscal. And thus you can see it ends up revising the forecast up slightly. And given the year-to-date information, we thought that was the appropriate move for this revenue source. For the liquor tax, there you can see that there were revisions more by the Department of Taxation there. And so the rule last time was averaging all three forecasts. And so that rule was maintained. And so there it ends up in a downward revision to the forecast of approximately $2 to $2.6 million a year as you go across the forecast path. And again, that's sort of looking at what we were able to get reported current year to date. The other tobacco product tax, you can see the changes there where taxation revised their forecast down. And then otherwise there was not that make up forecast. And so that one, last time taxation's forecast wasn't included in the averaging rule, it's just fiscal budget. And GFO and fiscal decided to maintain that rule. So you can see it results in a slight upward revision in the first 2 years and a very slight downward in the third year. So I would argue not much of a change to that revenue source. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, because I'm going to wait for the tax credits till the end. So that's the comments that I wanted to make with regards to the revenues on this page, Mr. Chairman. And I can address any questions that the members may have.
Any questions? Please go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, Russell Gannon for the record. So flipping to the next page, and so we have the licenses block of revenue sources and then fees and fines on this page. And so here, as you look, there really isn't much change except for commercial recordings, Secretary of State. And so again, we got an additional year-to-date information. And so based on that, you can see the fiscal revised their forecast up slightly, and then GFO revised theirs up more. And but the same rule, which was averaging all three last time, was maintained this time. Thus, you see the upward revision is really you add those two changes together, and you get 1/3 of them in terms of the change. And with that, that was really the only revenue source that I thought, when you look at the changes, was worth mentioning in licenses. Then in the fees and fines section, I think again you look there. The changes were to the short-term car rental of fiscal in the first year, again reacting to the year-to-date first quarter information that was reported. And then as well as getting, we also get information, this one includes the new peer-to-peer tax that was approved in the 2021 session. And so it's subsumed into this revenue source because it's the same tax structure. And again, as I stated at the last meeting, and I'll state it here again, we have to keep it in this revenue source because of the number of taxpayers. There would be concerns about disclosing information about individual taxpayers if we broke peer-to-peer out as a separate item. So since it's the same 10% tax, it's rolled into the short-term car rental. That's in that category. But then you can see the revision to this category in the out year, again, a little bit by fiscal and then more by budget. And the rule was maintained, which is the averaging of all three forecasts this time that was used. So then approximately you're taking that and splitting 1/3 of it as the adjustment to the forecast. And so with that, Mr. Chair, that was the comments that I wanted to make with regards to the revenue sources on these two blocks on this page.
Any questions? Ms. Walker?
Russell, under GL number 3152 securities, what's the $633,000 reduction in 2025?
So that would be, you can see that the rule there for that securities is we averaged all three. And then if you look at the table 3 difference, the budget office revised their FY25 forecast down by approximately $2 million. And so when we looked at it, there were some concerns, but we thought that, well, to take them out for that year only, or that, so we maintained the 3-year average, and then we're willing to accept the slight downward revision in that out year, probably because there's just a little bit more uncertainty out at the end of the forecast horizon.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, please go on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So then flipping, we're in the use of money and property category of the table. And so these are the repayments, and so you can see there's no change because those are the fixed repayments. But Mr. Thorley had the question to staff at the last meeting about that in the 21 session, there was a $50 million general fund appropriation made to the education stabilization account. And then there are repayment provisions required for that $50 million. But the repayment provisions for this general fund appropriation are slightly statutorily different than the other repayments that you see listed on this. So after staff from GFO and fiscal thinking about it, talking through it, there's going to be enough money and that'll be transferred from the SEF to the Education Stabilization Account at the end of biennium to fully cover the $50 million. So we thought because of the uniqueness of the statutory structure of this and that there will be enough money to pay off the $50 million one time, that it made more sense to handle it on the ending fund balance tables versus having to bring it on as a one-time thing to the economic forms tables, because we would have to make adjustments to put it on as a forecast to pick up the actual. So after discussing to it, we thought that was the better course of action for that revenue source. And so that is the response to that question from the last meeting. So then we did ask the Treasurer's Office, if they wanted to reconsider, and they did, and they informed us that given the information that they had, they chose not to revise their interest forecast. And so GFO and fiscal were comfortable staying with that because we think they know better about, obviously it's an interesting time, as we talked last time, with what the Federal Reserve is doing, trying to engineer the soft landing with the interest rates, and then the Treasurer being able to try and manage the portfolio within that interest rate environment. So we were comfortable staying with their forecast, also GFO and fiscal. Thus, there's no change. And then the other interest category is just we look at the year to date, and we're the budget made a slight upward adjustment for us. We didn't see any need for a budget to make a change. And so, thus you can see for that block, it's the easy one to do. It's all zeros in terms of the difference. Then down on the other revenue section, really, I don't think there's anything worth mentioning there in that under miscellaneous sales and refunds section. So then under GL 3255, the unclaimed property, you can see that there were no changes to the forecast. Again, we asked the Treasurer's Office, and they informed us based on the information they had that there's no need to change their forecast. And then fiscal and budget went and looked at what was going on year to date since the last meeting. No changes. And so then to address Ms. Walker's question to staff is to, like the other ones you can see, we can show where we are year to date. This one we don't. And so given our questions, as staff thought about it, we put together a set of charts. And so I won't belabor them, but just to explain that, a lot of the revenue sources, they have a very clear demarcation of the agency posting them and providing budget and fiscal report of what was for that month or quarter. Other ones just stream into the controller system as people are paying them and they get posted. And then we can go and look at the end of every month what was posted. But you can see if something hits September 30th one year, but hit October 1st the prior year, then trying to compare September to September. So lots of times what we do is look at it more on a streaming, which is, hey, cumulative year to date. So thinking about Ms. Walker's question was, okay, how to do this? I went and took the data from the controller system on both the inflows that come into the unclaimed property account and the outflows that go in. And right, this is occurring as we're talking. People could be remitting money to the treasurer's office on the inflow side, but people are making claims. So I went through and pulled all the transactions that were for each month and then did the cumulative. So the chart one is showing you the inflows, what I call total revenue to the unclaimed property account. And it's for fiscal year 23 year to date through November, but it's not full November because I would have done this. You can see around November, probably 18th, 19th would have been the information that I dated at November 20th. And then for the last two fiscal years. And it would have been nice to maybe show you a couple more fiscal years, but there's a little bit of labor that goes into compiling this. But it is, I think, interesting to now look at it that we have done this exercise. So, but you can see how there is a little bit of uniformity to how it flows in. But you can see between FY22 and FY21, hey, at the end of the fiscal year, it can get interesting because of the nature of the unclaimed property provisions and then the treasurer having to administer those for the inflows and the outflows. So then chart two is just showing you the outflows. And I took the general fund transfer out because if I didn't take it out, the two lines would match, right? Because revenues and outflows have to match. So I excluded the general fund transfer. And again, you can see there's some stability to the year to year. In fact, year to date, we're pretty much where we were the last 2 years. And so then flipping it over to chart three, that's showing you the net difference between the two, the inflows and the outflows. So again, I didn't know as I put this together, there's more uniformity here than I thought fiscal year to fiscal year. But there's a little bounce. But looking year to date, we're sort of running close to where we were the last 2 years. But it is worth noting that on this net, that FY21 and FY22 and year to date, 23, they were better years. Just for noting, FY18, the general fund transfer was around 27 million. It was around 21 million in FY 2019 and around 31 million in FY 20. So these were better years, but the data seems to be leading me to believe that unless something's going to happen over the remainder of the fiscal year, we should track somewhat close. But again, you never know. So then chart four is it's putting the revenues, the inflows and outflows together in one chart. So out at the end of the fiscal year in June, that gap is equal to what the chart three is the transfer. So, Ms. Walker, that was staff's attempt to compile some information to allow you to see what staff is looking at for this revenue source because of its uniqueness, that we can't really compile and show you what the revenues are like we do for the other ones because it's this netting out effect. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, that's the comments that I wanted to make for the revenues on this table. And so maybe before going into the tax credits, we can see if there's any questions on any of the revenue sources on this page.
Any questions? Ms. Walker?
I just wanted to say thank you. I thought this was very interesting. Thank you very much for doing that.
You're welcome, Ms. Walker. And it actually was sort of interesting to put together, and probably will keep maintaining it because it helps us think about when you're looking at it and forecasting, where are we? I mean, we're looking at that already, but it's in a more tabular format. And so sometimes when you put things in a chart versus a table, you visualize it differently. So, Mr. Chairman, then with the tax credits, there's only a change to really the educational choice. And that was more because we were working with taxation sort of in the last meeting, and then we were able to get the information on, right, several of the tax credit programs, but educational choices, people make donations, and then they, MBT taxpayers can make donations, and then they can get tax credits. And then when they take, so when they're granted the tax credit certificate versus when they're taking it, can get off with across fiscal years and all that. And especially the pandemic caused a little bit of distortions we noticed in this. Because again, think about it, it's tuition for kids going to school, and there was a little bit of disruption in kids going to school. So things during that period, so things got a little off. But the Department of Taxation, based on requests from staff, was able to compile the information about what credits have been issued and more what's still remaining to be taken into those. So we got a number that led us to believe that we were assuming there was too much left to be taken. So based on that, we realized we needed to come down a little bit from how much we had on the sheets over the 3 years. So then looking at for the first quarter of credits that were taken against MBT that was reported to us, it was slightly above the first quarter a year ago. So, and since there was approximately $11.8 million taken in FY 2022, we thought probably we should revise FY 23 up. And so we just put the $12 million that you see on the sheets, which then revises the amount of credits to be taken up by the 600,000. But then since we had less credits, we had to then reduce, and we believe then that'll occur in FY 24. So then it's the downward revision of approximately $1.5 million. So that's really, it's the adjustment of we got more accurate information on the amount of credits that were still outstanding, and that was a little less than what we thought for the last cycle, and so we made that adjustment. And right, this is guessing where they'll take them, but we think now that sort of schools are back, that if they took 11.8, then the 12 million seems reasonable that they'll take them now, and versus pushing them off to be taken in 24 and 25. And with that, Mr. Chairman, was the comments that I wanted to make with regards to the tax credit portion of this agenda item.
Any questions? Please go on.
So that's really the revenue and tax credit forecast. What I just thought what I would provide for the committee is to give some information on the changes. So for FY23, the forecast that you're looking at here is about $500,000 higher than the FY23 forecast that was presented to this body at the November 4th meeting. For FY24, it's about $3.4 million higher. And then for FY25, it's about $1.8 million higher. So over the 3 years, FY23, FY24, and FY25, it's approximately $5.6 million higher. And then if you want to go look at the 23-25 biennium, that is FY24 to FY25, compared to the actual for FY22 and the forecast in this table for FY23, that biennium, the biennium difference is approximately $144.6 million less. But remember, the main element driving that is the MPM and the gold and silver. It's in there for 22 and 23. It's not in there for 24 and 25. If you would exclude that and get apples to apples, the FY24 and FY25 as a biennium would be approximately $112 million over the preceding biennium. So I just think that's worth pointing out that when you go look, that there is additional revenue being forecast in the next biennium compared to the current one. It's because of the change in the revenue structure is driving that it looks like they're going down. Well, it doesn't look, they are. But it's because of the change that's required in the taxes and where the revenues go. And with that, Mr. Chairman, it was the additional comments I wanted to add just for the members' edification. And with that, I can answer any questions that the members may have.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Gendon. I think with that, we're ready to accept a motion to approve the adjusted revenue forecasts here. We have a motion by Ms. Walker.
Second.
Second by Ms. Stevenson. Any questions or any discussion, rather? Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes. Our next agenda item is one final opportunity for public comment. Does anyone in Carson City want to make public
Excuse
comment?
me, Chair, this is broadcast. I hate to interrupt the meeting, but we're having a problem with the Zoom screen showing up as blue. Your broadcast is good, but if there's any way that we could take a brief recess, disconnect our SIP and reconnect you, that way everyone in the Zoom can see the spreadsheets and see what's coming through.
Okay. I guess we will be in
Would that
a
be okay?
brief recess.
Thank you. Stand by 1 second, please.
You are in the meeting now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So sorry for the interruption. We're still having an issue, but since we're moving to public comment, that should not be an issue. Sorry to interrupt. You may resume your meeting.
All right. Thank you. So I'd like to, I guess, call the meeting back to order. I think it's the right thing to do. So we left off. We have a motion from Ms. Walker, or we voted. We are on public comment. Sorry, I'm catching up. So we're in public comment. No one in Carson City wanted to make public comment. Do we have any online public comment?
Chair, your public line is open and working and you have no callers at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you. With that, our public comment period is closed, and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.